I don't think we have your mic on, so do be sure to hit your mic. We're not hearing Jason. Let's give a second to just figure out what's going on here. All right. Well, obviously I have some technical difficulties. Lyman, I assume you're hearing me. Are you hearing Jason? Lyman's our producer. Checking in with him.
How about now, Dan? Can you hear me now?
There we go. Hey, Jason, good morning. And now I lost you again.
That's okay. How about now? Is that better?
Now I can hear you. Good morning. How are you, Jason? Hopefully we can keep your audio.
Great. We had such a great tech check, you know? It's just, of course, something had to go wrong when we went live.
Yeah, no matter how much you prepare, there's always a surprise. And one of the surprises this morning is that our normal host, Jennifer Ann Mason, is not going to be with us today. She's fighting a migraine, so she had to step aside at the last minute, leaving Jason to be the host of today. So, Jason, it's a pleasure to be your guest, actually.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I was really looking forward to getting to spend some quality time with Jen today. We were out at Ignite last week together, and I actually just joined up with her team at Rackspace. So that was my big news from last week. I got to start with the team at Rackspace, and unfortunately, Jen's out sick.
Hey, wait. Yeah, tell us a little bit about what you're doing at Rackspace. I think that's really cool that you moved over there. What's your new role?
My new role is the Office 365 Advisory Services Manager. We announced last week that Rackspace is going to be in the Office 365 game from a managed services perspective. We have an advisory services, white glove services sits on top of that. And being in now, let's see, I'm on day 8 of my employment. So it's definitely a wild ride and a lot of fun. But I'm looking forward. We're making the move, taking the family back to Texas. So my little Longhorn gets to become real again. We're moving home. So
wonderful. Well, congratulations on your new job and the chance to move back. So they're actually adding sort of a layer of support and both configuration and end user support and additional features on top of Office 365, right?
Absolutely. So we'll be handling all of that. It's a new service for Rackspace in a whole new world, doing all sorts of fun and exciting stuff. I get to go spend my first week at the castle next week, so I fly out late Sunday night and get to actually be in the Rackspace office for the first time as an employee. I've been there many times. I went in to speak at the SharePoint user group for San Antonio a number of years ago. I got to ride the slide, all sorts of fun stuff. But I actually get to go as an employee, so I'm very excited.
Very cool. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, let me allow you to put your host hat back on, and are you ready to jump into the sway for the day?
Absolutely. I sort of started going down the sway here. Let's start up here at the top. Let me share my screen because I'm obviously not sharing my screen yet. Share this.
And for those of you who are new to Office 365 Pulse, so we present the materials in a sway form, and you can actually watch it as we go through the broadcast today. But also, there's a link to the sway in the Office 365 Pulse links module, so you can actually go and look at the sway offline as well if you'd like.
All right. So yeah, so Jen had put this together for us, and Dan got us kicked off. So thanks, Dan, for that. So today's host, unfortunately, Jen's not with us, but Jen does this every 2 weeks, and I've already been rescheduled to get an opportunity to do this with Jen 2 weeks from today. So we'll be back doing that. But I'm honored to get an opportunity to present with one of my heroes in the SharePoint community. Office 365 community, and a dear, dear friend with Dan Holm. Dan's the CEO of IT Unity, which I happen to be honored to be a contributor to. So yeah, sadly, Jen is fighting a migraine. So Jen is very much a Disney fan, so we found a sad mini for her. So send her good vibes. I've got my, let's see if I can slide the right way, my little tribute to Jen up there. Get well, Jen. We want you to feel better really soon. But Dan, we sort of started talking, and we, as our viewers might know, you jumped in at the last second to be Jen's understudy for the day, and we've talked many times about all the fun and excitement that we had out at Ignite last week, and all of the great new announcements that came out of it. From your perspective, what was your favorite moment of Ignite last week?
My favorite moment, well, that's a tough one because there were obviously a lot of excellent moments out there. I think the excitement in the Office 365 space particularly was my favorite moment, and it stretched over the entire event, really. I think people were very enthusiastic about the directions that Microsoft unveiled, both from the developer side, starting at Build, the IT Pro side at Ignite, and even more importantly, the business. I think people really started to see the grander scheme of what Microsoft is trying to do with Office 365 rather than it just being about Lync, SharePoint, and Exchange running online. I think they really started to see some of the value and innovation that's happening and breathing a big sigh of relief that they're going to be able to access some of that functionality through some of the hybrid options on-prem. So that general vibe and excitement was really what will sit with me from last week in Chicago.
Cool.
What about you?
Well, from a snarky perspective, because I have to go there first because it's a lot more fun, my favorite moment of the week was the comment of "Who's Common?" That I kept hearing after the keynote, where Common came out and did something at Ignite, and lots of folks were not familiar with his work and who he is. So that was enjoyable to see people walking around. I was staffing for Microsoft last week. I was honored to be asked to staff the dev.office.com booth. As a non-developer, Eric Harlan and I were the two IT pros talking to developers about dev fun. So it was very, very interesting for me to go and do that. So for me, getting to do that was a big honor. But more than that, getting to talk to developers and help them understand where the world is going and how it's being shaped differently. And also, just getting the opportunity to spend some time with that community, with the developer community of Office 365 specifically, and seeing how many people came from other areas around the conference. I identify myself as an IT pro. I identify myself as a Lync expert. I identify myself as a business user. All of them coming and having conversations with us. Maybe it was because we were giving away Raspberry Pis. That's possible. But I think more than that, it was that they really are interested in hearing what is new and exciting in the Office 365 development world. So that was a lot of fun for me to do.
Yeah, and so Michael was joking that he thought Common was a code name for a Microsoft service. No, Common was the rapper who opened up the entire keynote. And interestingly, it's sort of like a theme in a way for the whole event and as well as for Build, because I think what we saw is Microsoft really trying to position Office 365 as the common platform for productivity across all devices and experiences. They really made a big push. And, it's interesting because, you were talking about how much you like the dev interaction. And I was at Build the previous week and thought the exact same thing. I thought the excitement among the dev audience was extraordinary. The blur of people who used to be sort of open web or were sort of Azure, and very few people were really Office 365 developers yet. And all of them sort of coming together and celebrating what Microsoft is building with these new APIs. And it's particularly interesting because you and I are both IT pros sort of by trade and by career. And this is a business-focused show, and I think that's also sort of the thing that the idea of Common created a theme for is all of us needing to sort of understand together how this impacts us at the business level, how it impacts us as IT pros, and how it impacts our developers.
Yeah. I think they couldn't find a rapper named Unified, so Common was the best one to go with. So I was going to make a basic joke, but I decided that was way too old school. So
yeah.
So yeah, I thought that the show was, from a content perspective, was good. It was nice to see as many community sessions as there were. Obviously, it's always better to see more than fewer. But the thing that I heard from more people than not was that the panel sessions of MVPs went really, really well. Diverse groups, and I know you were a part of one of those, people that didn't get put together beforehand, that got brought together to answer questions and really speak on a panel that were really dynamic and exciting, and people really seemed to take to those sessions very well. So hopefully they'll continue to do that and do more of them in the future with that diverse crowd. So.
Yeah, that was, I did do the SharePoint on-prem cloud and hybrid panel, which ended up being a panel about everything with Christian and Jen and several others. We had about 6 people on the panel. And it was amazing how effective it was and how popular it was as well. So if those of you who are watching the show haven't had a chance to look at the recordings for Ignite yet, those panels I would highly recommend. They're going to be the first things that I download and review because they're just packed with information and perspectives. And by the way, we're going to be doing an online event in June, the 9th, 10th, and 11th of June, and you'll be able to see some of those panels during that event as well. So we should be announcing that event later this week or first thing next week, but keep an eye out for Unity Connect Online. Just a little plug there, sorry.
So the next topic here was, what was your key takeaway? What was the one thing that you took away from the show? And again, seeing as this is a business-focused conversation, what was your business-focused takeaway from the event?
I'm going to split it in 2 related takeaways. The first of which is, it's clear that the amount of innovation that's happening in the cloud is only accelerating, and that businesses need to really start looking at not where do we put the whole business? Do we put all on-prem, all on the cloud? But rather, where do we put each use case, each workload, as Microsoft likes to call it? We need to really start looking at what we're doing as a business in a much more granular way and deciding how we support that with technology. And I think a lot of workloads, a lot of use cases really do belong in Office 365 now. It's the power not only of what's there in place today, but also what's coming out this year is just mind-blowing. And related to that, sort of a sub takeaway is the whole discussion of the cloud not being secure is done. What Microsoft has built into the cloud is far more than even some of our common DoD customers are able to do on premises. And there's just no way that you can look at the cloud and say that your on-prem environment is as secure. Now that said, there's other reasons not to use the cloud, but I honestly don't think security is one of them anymore. I think that is, whoops, uh-oh. I'll let you go, Jace. I don't know if you can hear me or not, but my computer's doing something.
I can, yeah. You froze for just a second, but you're back. So from a business perspective, my takeaways were a little bit different. The difference between this event and a lot of other events, for me, just watching what was going on from working inside of that one specific area, working for Microsoft, the conversations that I had with people were more around how do I leverage what is out there, and taking what has already been put out. Microsoft has this massive rolling cadence right now, releasing so fast to the cloud. How do I pause and take advantage of what they've given us so far? One of the really cool things that Joe Bellafiore did in the keynote was showed us the Windows 10 demos, and those were really powerful, especially for the end user. All this focus on how does Cortana plug into, I was watching part of it this morning just because I'm that much of a dork. I had to go back and rewatch the BI portion of the Cortana demo and see how he plugged in the content around attendees into Power BI and talked to Cortana and said, how many attendees are there? And what is the, how many desktops are there in our top customers who are here at Ignite? That was really cool for me. The power of what we're going to be able to do with what they've given us so far is huge, and people really want to, as much as they want the innovation, they want to stay at the bleeding edge, and people want that. Companies want to pause and say, how do I take advantage of what you've already given me? And I want to understand that because there's so much new. And with this new openness from Microsoft, when it was all closed, it was okay, because I only had to deal with that which I knew. And when Microsoft was very closed off, but prior to Windows 8 launching, the doors were closed and we trickled information out periodically. But now that there's a new thing on the blogs every 2 days of look at what we're doing, look at this new stuff, it's overwhelming to business users. It's overwhelming to customers. They need someone and they need us to come out and say, hey, here's what's important. That's what I love about what Jen does with this show, is she really focuses and tells people, here's what's new. The catch-up from Ignite is one that I know she had a lot of stuff she wanted to talk about of all the business-focused stuff. Unfortunately, with her not being here today, you folks have to deal with Dan and I and our IT pro nature. But the immense pile of new stuff that is being brought to the table for the business, if you want it and you think, God, I wish Microsoft would do that, probably there's a 70% chance that it's already baked into a product that's out there. And it's just a matter of understanding where to find it and how to leverage it. So,
what, Jason, and you can correct me if we're talking about this later in the event, but what are some of the top business functionality announcements that really impact the audience of this show, or from your perspective?
I was going to get to some of that a little bit later, I think.
Okay, wait. I don't remember.
No, that's okay. Yeah, that's okay. Some of the things for me that came out actually came out at Build more than they came out at Ignite, a week before. And they're things that the business user is going to care about from a functionality perspective. And so I have my little scratch notes because there was so much I had to write them down. Digital is great, but every once in a while being able to rip up a card and throwing it over your shoulder, David Letterman style, is a little bit more fun too. So the couple of things that matter from a business user perspective for me, Office 365 and and Azure specifically with the new ExpressRoute functionality that's coming, be able to make things closer for the user, be able to make it faster for the end user, to be able to get to their data, to be able to have the hybrid scenarios that I'll leave to you to talk about because I don't want to steal all the thunder. But those things that came out and got announced, and actually on the blogs, I think it came out today or yesterday, they announced who the first 3 ExpressRoute vendors for Office 365 and Azure are. So if you go to blogs.microsoft or blogs.office.com, you can find that information there. So that was one. The new unified API for Office 365 and being able to get at data from multiple different ways that the app developers can go off and write and gather data through one unified API. It's no longer, well, I've got to plumb it this way, I've got to plumb it that way. From a business user perspective, being able to say, I want to get this, and actually being able to get at that information is very powerful. Specifically, the Office Graph functionality that came out that they demoed at Build around all of the new stuff that we can gather, all of the new signals that we can pull from, whether it's Salesforce or Yammer or Twitter or all of these different places that we can now gather together and push into Delve. And they're actually pulling that off now. And I believe that it's out of first release. Delve is now out of first release at this point. This functionality, I don't know if it's pushed out to every tenant out there, but it's very exciting to see and it's very exciting to experience. Delve becoming a first-class citizen and the new way that we find information if you're in Office 365. And with that, I'll let you talk a little bit to some of the announcements that came about hybrid and to that.
Well, going off of your discussion of Delve, I think one of the key points that Microsoft is making now is that the power of the functionality that they built in the cloud will now be able to support hybrid scenarios. So, for example, on-prem data and on-prem content is going to be able to be fed into the Office Graph in the cloud and exposed in Delve in a unified way. So you can see both your on-prem and, if you have it, cloud data through Office Graph-powered experiences like Delve. And also, I think in a similar way, that these hybrid scenarios will not only support on-prem and cloud, but will support across cloud tenancies. And I think that's particularly important for some of the larger and more geographically dispersed organizations in the world, because it means they're going to be able to have a tenancy in the European data center, for example, and a tenancy in the North American data center. And that's sometimes necessary just for geolocation issues regarding data and geo-sovereignty issues. And then those two tenancies will be able to have a unified experience through these new hybrid capabilities. One of the big hybrid announcements that didn't really get enough press, but I think is huge, is the new identity capabilities that they're planning for external sharing, where effectively right now external sharing is kind of all or nothing, and you're sort of inviting people in based on their email addresses, and hopefully it all works. And what they're planning is much more robust and feature-rich, where an organization can trust a partner organization, either letting all users share with all users or a subset of users, so you can really lock down who things are able to be shared with. You can do that based on your on-prem identity stores and trusts. And so the different ways that you're going to be able to take, let's call it an organization loosely defined, and integrate that with other organizations to create dynamic teams is really super cool. And then the other thing I think I'd like to hit really up front, if we're not going to, and you can tell me if we've got a piece of the sway for it later, but is groups. Is that later in the...
Don't have anything for groups, please.
Okay. So I think one of the coolest things and one of the most important things for the business audience is groups. Office 365 groups have been around for a little while in first release. They're now at general availability. And it is very clear that groups are where Microsoft expects the collaboration workload to live. So that rather than living in a team site moving forward, that use case will be best supported in a group where you're going to be able to plug in all kinds of additional experiences from across Office 365. So it's no longer just SharePoint. You've got your discussion, which can be a distribution list, a conversation, which can be Yammer. You've got OneDrive. You've got OneNote. You've got, I'm spacing now. All of these things, and then the group experience is able to be presented through Office Graph and Delve, and so that's where Microsoft is expecting us to start moving our collaboration workloads to. Now, team sites aren't going to go away. There's still lots of reasons people use team sites other than just basic collaboration, but for those basic collaboration scenarios, groups are now clearly the direction. And I think what the audience of this show needs to think about is, when you're establishing a new collaboration workload, let's call it a team or a department or a project or whatever, if groups can support it today, if it has the features you need to get by today, you really should put it there instead of team sites, because groups are only going to get better and better and better. And if a group isn't right today, stick with a team site, but keep very close eyes on what groups are doing, because it won't be long before there's going to be some capabilities in groups that will add value to your collaboration use case.
So Dan, let me ask you a question. I've heard from many of our IT pro friends in the community, when we first started hearing about groups, groups are self-service, right?
Yeah, they were initially released that way. Yeah, they were initially released that way, where it was very tough to by default, anyone could create a group, and by default, every group was open, and that caused a lot of IT pros a lot of heartburn, in some cases justifiable heartburn. But those controls are being baked in. Now, at Ignite, they announced that there's going to be some new PowerShell commandlets that are going to allow organizations to provision and manage groups and their properties. That will open up a lot of possibilities. And there's going to be, and Microsoft is clearly going into that phase that they promised us they would, which is after they release something and see if it's working and see if it's going to be adopted, then they start baking in the controls. And they're clearly on that path now. So as an organization, you want to also balance out what groups can do against your governance and such. But there's a way to get around almost anything. What I've done in my organization, for example, is we've created one user account that can create groups. So we've created a user account. The way you currently have to manage groups is through Outlook Web Access Mailbox policies, which is kind of, I know this is getting geeky for a business show, but they're not very easily managed. But in the current environment, all we could do basically is say, by default, no one can create groups, and then enable the setting on this one user. And when someone needed to create a group, that one user was who did it. Now that was a workaround given the current lack of granularity, but now with the new controls that they're baking in, as soon as those do get released, organizations should have far less heartburn about group creation and management. And in the end, a group is really just a membership construct. It's an Active Directory group. So there's not going to be much difference between managing a group in Active Directory than in managing an Office 365 group.
It's a great point, and thank you for taking the bait on that one. I really appreciate that. It's fun when we get to have these conversations in public that we haven't had prior, and we can hand it off quite that way. right out of the gates, groups was a very scary concept, just like self-service site creation was when we first saw that come out in 2013 as turned on by default. It was very terrifying. But Microsoft, with the new way that they're going to market, with bringing things out as a minimum viable product and saying, hi, do you like this? Is this going to be the way that we, it gets adopted? It really is much better from a business user perspective to be able to get in, try things out. Now, with that said, we have to expect that there are going to be some things that we get put out there that we try that maybe we fall in love with, that Microsoft is going to look at and say, you know what, we're really not going to follow that through, and we're not going to continue that investment. But it is, the best way to follow through on that is actually to go out to the user voice pages and actually vote things up when you're enjoying something, when you're liking something, use it, because the telemetry that they're getting back is great. But also ask for feature enhancements using user voice. It's not a developer tool, folks. It really isn't. It's meant for us. It's meant for us to go in and say, I don't like the way that this works. I want to see this in a better fashion, and be able to go in and put it in, and then go get your friends to vote it up. Actually go in and not only write it well so that other people will see it, but go out and post it on social media and say, hey, I just posted this to user voice. Go vote for this if you agree with me. It really is a social campaign that you have to follow through on. So the next question that's here on the Sway, since we've sort of diverged from the Sway, as is our common practice, if you missed Ignite, how can you catch up? What's the best way? I've mentioned already at least 2 or 3 times. I've been sitting here watching sessions. I know you've mentioned it as well. For the audience at large, in the Pulse links here in the session, the Ignite session videos on Channel 9, that's the right way to go out and do that. If you go out to channel9.msdn.com, you can go out and watch sessions from pretty much any conference dating back 3 years. They've published all the SharePoint conference sessions from last year and I believe the year before. All of these things are out there for free for you to go download. You can watch them streaming live, and you can also download the slide decks that are there for you as well. All these things should be complete at this point. I know I found one that wasn't up there, but Mark Cashman made a comment that it was going to be up there by later today. Sorry, it wasn't Mark. I'm defaming Mark. I apologize. It was Christoph who made the comment because there was one about groups specifically, the overview of groups. So if you're looking for that one should get posted sometime today. But if you're someone who has just way too much bandwidth at home and way too much disk space, feel free to go out. Here in the links also, you will find Vlad Constanescu's The Ultimate Script for Downloading Microsoft Ignite Videos and Slides. Almost 300 gigabytes of content for you to go download at your discretion. Your neighbors, if you're on a cable modem, will hate you for a while because it's a lot of content. I think the last time I saw was 292 gig of content. The nice thing about Vlad's PowerShell script in it is PowerShell, so for business users, maybe not as friendly as you'd like it. There is a flag in there for actually filtering on what you're looking for by session name. So you can go pull all of the SharePoint or all of the Office 365 or all of the Office sessions, however you'd like it. If you're looking for Skype, you can do that as well. So go off and do that, check it out. Personally, I used to download them all. I used to work on writing some of these scripts and trying to pull them all. I don't have enough time to watch 300 gigs worth of videos. Yeah, so I'm watching them. I've downloaded some, and Dan, I know you have as well, to watch on airplanes. It's really great. They actually have multiple different versions. So if you're trying to download it to your phone, you might want a minimal version of it versus the high-res version if you're doing lunch and learns at your office. Download the high-res version so it looks better on the bigger screen. Definitely worth doing, and then just delete it once you're done.
Yeah, exactly. And one other resource that we don't yet have on the links, and maybe Eric or Lyman can add it in there, but IT Unity asked our authors to create guides to Ignite. Jason, you did one for PowerShell. Jen did one for business. Kathy Dew did one for branding. So we've got a number of our great authors who put together these expert guides that were basically designed to help people going to Ignite to choose the right sessions. Well, our wonderful managing editor, Eric Ruthrup, has gone through and changed all of those guides to point to the videos for those sessions. So you now have basically a table of contents of great sessions picked by Jason Himmelstein about PowerShell with all of the links to those recordings. So that's going to be perhaps a great way to find the right sessions to watch. And one other thing that we're in the process of doing, and I'll tell this audience today, I'm working with Vlad currently to allow us to basically create a link between our guides and his script. So you're going to be able to take the sessions that our experts have picked as best of breed sessions from Ignite, and you'll be able to put them into a script and download just those sessions. So we're in the process of solidifying that, and I think that'll be done by the end of the week. So that'll be a great.
Now there are two links for you in the in the links window. Both the Experts Guides to Ignite Sessions and Content and the IT Unity Guides to Ignite are both there. Both of those should go to the same place. So please click on both of them. Get the extra traffic going to the site.
I'll remove one of them here. So we can not have duplicate links. There we go. And then also, if you're interested, if you go to IT Unity's site and go to the Ignite menu, we had a live blog that we were running both during Build and during Ignite. And that live blog was multiple authors. So we had people in multiple sessions, we had multiple voices, and it's a great way to sort of see what some of us thought as we were sitting there was the most important stuff that was coming out. So if you don't want to necessarily weed through hours and hours of video, you can skim through the live blog and pick out some great nuggets of information from there as well. One other point is we've got a couple of other shows coming up. So on Friday, Bill Baer is going to be here on IT Unity with his Tech Talk show, which is going to be all Ask Bill about SharePoint 2016 and hybrid. So there's going to be a lot of IT Pro information there. Then we have Collab Talk on the 26th of May with Christian, Buckley, Naomi Moneypenny, Ben Nealon, and Mark Anderson, who will talk about the sort of larger strategic things that came out of Ignite. And then, as I mentioned, we've got the online event in June that we'll be announcing as a way to catch up. So lots and lots and lots of ways to catch up. Have we missed anything?
I don't think so. I think you hit on most of the big ones there. Yeah, we will be back for this show again as well in 2 weeks. And Jen will, I'm sure we'll take a little bit of time to talk about Jen's perspective on a wrap up from Ignite. Also, I know she attended a lot of the more business focused sessions and was able to go off and do that. So we'll recap a little bit about that at that point as well. Plus, talk about all the news and events of the past 2 weeks. 2 weeks from today. So looking into my future, it's going to be an exciting show. So the next one that I had here...
Actually, I think, just a little correction, I'm hearing from our producer that that's actually next week, Jason. It's the 20th. There is a pulse on maybe yours is 2 weeks, but anyway, there is a pulse on the 20th, and the registration link is already in the resources right down there.
I probably just had the date wrong. Thanks for correcting me on that. It is next week. I don't have my calendar open right now, but the 20th is next week. So live from the castle, Jen and I will be together for that, I believe. So it should be a lot of fun. So the next thing that I had here was, to talk a little bit, and since we're a business show, we want to avoid going too deep into the geek weeds about Build. What was the best announcement for you around Build, Dan? Anything specific that was a changer for you? I know we've touched on a couple of them. Feel free if it's a recap to bypass, but
no, there's one that you know that we can talk about in a moment about the HoloLens.
Yeah.
But I think actually the biggest announcement for me was a developer event, but it impacts business directly, and that is the new add-in model for developing apps for Office 365 and for Office clients like Outlook, Word, and Excel. The add-in model is going to be something that allows developers very easily to take existing code from existing websites, existing mobile apps, and plug it into SharePoint, into Outlook, into Excel, Word, and PowerPoint, and bring functionality right to you, whereas you as a user used to have to go somewhere else for it. So I think all of us as users have been in situations where we've been somewhere looking at data and we've had to copy and paste it into Excel. Or we've been in Outlook and we've scheduled a meeting and we needed to find a restaurant, so we had to go out to the web and find a restaurant. Those kinds of things are now coming together so the experience can all be in one place. So for example, if I need to get back-end data into Excel with an add-in, built by the company who makes the data, or built it by our enterprise developers, we can actually pull that data right into Excel without ever having to leave Excel and analyze it and manipulate it and deal with it. And similarly with Outlook, if I'm scheduling a meeting and I need to find a restaurant or get an Uber ride, those kinds of experiences will be right there in the context of making the meeting, as opposed to it having to be two completely separate experiences. And I think that's going to be that's going to lead to a wave of innovation that is going to be huge. Developers have been a little slow in building apps for Microsoft because iPhone and Android have been so huge on the mobile space. I think while Microsoft isn't necessarily very big on the mobile space, what Microsoft does have is hundreds and hundreds of millions of users of Office. And I think as soon as those apps can be surfaced to that many people, that's going to be a market that those developers are going to scramble for. So I think we're going to see a lot of innovation and a lot of opportunity there. So as a business user, you want to be aware that this has changed. It's a big change. And if you're needing to drive your own developers to do things, make sure they know how to take advantage of this model. And similarly, if you're going to try and build a solution by putting together other people's tools, you're going to be able to see a lot of innovation over the rest of the year in that space. What about you, Jason?
I want to agree with you wholeheartedly on that. As I mentioned, I got to staff for Microsoft at Ignite last week, and a lot of what I was doing was helping people understand this add-ins model. And flashback to the previous year, the session that I got to do at Ignite, at SharePoint Conference, was actually apps for Office. On the developer track as an IT pro talking to a business community. The reason why I thought that was important was because it's important for us to understand what the changes are to this model. And at that point, they were still called apps, but now as you mentioned, they are called add-ins. Add-ins as a business, that's what we're used to looking for. I'm going to get an add-in to Outlook in order to be able to do this additional thing. In prior existence, we've had the FedEx add-in, and being able to scan, have it be there as a part of Outlook Web Access, and have it scan your email for any FedEx tracking numbers, be able to track right from that same pane. It was huge. And just seeing all the different stuff that we can do, if you go out to dev.office.com, have your developers go out there, they can register right on the page, get a free developer tenant for a year. Right now they're getting, I believe it's drip.com will be coming out to them later on in the year for free, as well as some of the Telerik controls. And Telerik is one of the leaders out there in development that developers are used to using from controls perspective. But there's also something, if you go to dev.office.com, I believe it's /mini-labs. There are a couple of mini labs that you can do from a developer perspective that were huge, that people came, business users came, got walked through, were able to understand what is this, how is it going in. Simply a manifest.xml file and some JavaScript, I can explain to my developers what I want to see out of this now that they understand the complexity that goes into actually having this add-in happen, and knowing that it is something that can be done, being able to go to the developers and actually ask for something real for the business to be able to be leveraged at that point. It was a nice thing. I had the gentleman who came and stood at the device bar for about an hour and walked through some of these labs just so that he could understand how to take it back. He was a manager of from the business side, wanted to understand what was going on, what was new with this dev model, and why that mattered to his business. We had a phenomenal conversation about it. It was a lot of fun. All those things got announced at Build.
Not to put you on the spot, but I'm going to, because that sounds like a really interesting topic. Would you be willing to do that as part of the online event in June?
I'll do anything you want, Dan, as always.
That sounds like a great one. I like that. And one of the things that I think people who followed the live blog might have seen that I got to do at Ignite at Build was I got to play with the HoloLens, the new Microsoft holographics goggles that turn your world into a extension of your computer basically, and it was amazing. So if you haven't had a chance to look at what HoloLens does, go to Microsoft.com/HoloLens, like holographic lens, HoloLens, and take a look at some of the videos that demonstrate some of the scenarios that they're building this for. HoloLens is different than some of the other virtual reality products that are out there. There's a Google Lens, which was sort of projecting some information into your world. There's Oculus, which is really a full immersion experience designed primarily for gaming. What this is about allowing you to interact with your existing space and creating new things and experiences in that space that aren't there, that are completely 3D and holographic and immersive. And there's a number of scenarios where this can be helpful. One of them that they demonstrated was back in January was the idea of, you might be under your sink trying to fix a pipe, and you could actually Skype call a friend, and he could see that pipe, and you could see him, and he could tell you exactly which screw to tighten and which way to tighten it, and you could actually have him in that space guiding you along the way. So the integration of Skype and being able to have people around you and communicate in a little bit more virtual reality way is very interesting. But then you get into scenarios around medicine, where in a surgical experience you might be able to bring in an expert in a surgery from a remote part of the world who can be there and experience the surgery and see it in 3D, and you'd be able to get guidance as to where to make a cut, where to make a suture, and those kinds of things. Education. Someone from one of the big universities in Ohio, I believe, was talking about how holographics will change the way people learn anatomy, because right now you have to learn anatomy with cadavers, with dead bodies. And with holographics, you're able to actually have a 3D human body and look at the different layers of it and peel back layers to see what's going on in the human body. And then the scenario that I experienced was an architecture scenario where in current architectural models, you build a model of a building. And it's the size of a table maybe, and that's about it. You can sort of get a feeling, but you can't really see what it's like to be in the building. As soon as you have HoloLens, you're able to actually put that model in 3D space. You don't even have to build it. It just sort of lands on the table thanks to the holographic projection. And then you can put yourself inside of it, and you can walk around the building and see what it's like. It's really just amazing to see what bringing computer information into a physical space can do. And I'll share one other story, which was back in the late 1800s in France. One of the first movies was of a train arriving, and it panicked people in the movie theater because when they saw this train coming on film, because they thought it was a train coming into the theater. It was something that their minds just weren't ready to comprehend. So I had two experiences like that when I had the HoloLens on my head. The first was in the architecture scenario. The first demo that they showed us was one where I was sitting at a computer monitor, normal computer, with an architectural 3D rendering of a building. And so sort of AutoCAD kind of thing. And then over on a table next to me, if I looked at it, I could see the 3D rendering of the model in 3D thanks to the holographic. So I could see it on 2D in the monitor, and then I could see it in 3D sitting right next to me. And I could raise and lower the height of the building by dragging the mouse up and down on the computer, and I would look over and I'd see the roof of the building raising and lowering in 3D. And that was pretty cool. But then what was amazing was they said, okay, now move your mouse over to the building. I was like, what? And they said, just take your mouse from the screen and move it over to the building, which was over here for me. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. So I took my mouse and I dragged it, and I watched the mouse go on the screen, and then the mouse left the screen, floated in midair, and I could see it in the room as I dropped it onto the roof of the building and dragged it up. The mouse left the screen. It freaked me out. I could not, it was like, whoa, that shouldn't be happening. There's a mouse in midair, a mouse pointer. And that was really weird. And the other thing that was really freaky for me was part of the demo was I went into the building, and the lead architect appeared through a Skype call to talk to me about some stuff. And so there's this avatar of a human being representing the lead architect. It's the shape of a body. It doesn't have facial features, but it's sort of a head. It's this avatar, and it has a little pointer above that says Richard, and has, so I know who it is that's talking to me. That's all cool. Then he starts talking to me, and the audio in the HoloLens is so good. It freaked me out because all of a sudden Richard was there in full surround sound. It sounded like I was talking to a real person. Completely bizarre. So our experience with life and with information is really going to change with technologies like HoloLens that comes out later this year. And I've got to say, my experience with it was extraordinary. I cannot wait to see what people build with this stuff, because it's going to open up. It is going to do for the next wave of technology what the iPhone did for the last wave of technology, I think.
The HoloLens demo that they did in the keynote was thrilling. It was very cool. I was very envious that you got to go do that. I know that a lot of our friends at Microsoft weren't able to go and do it themselves because they really wanted the consumers, the people who were there for Build, to get an opportunity to take advantage of it. So you're one of the few people that I know who actually got to take advantage of playing with HoloLens. I can tell you for a fact that my wife has already said no.
What?
Yeah. Oh, I have to work on that one. More flowers, more begging is going to be required for that. You've met my wife. She won't go for that one. No, the really neat thing was being able to position, for me, to be able to position things where you want them and have them come back into the same space. So one of the nice things, for being someone who does work from home a decent amount, be able to be the immersive world that you're in, doing the teleconferencing capability, but then to be able to get up and walk to another room and actually leave one space behind and go into another space where you've got your work world set up in one space and personal set up in another. Thought that was really neat when they did the demo of the guy's apartment. Very interesting stuff. And I'm not sure how excited I am about my kids having these at some point, because the one that was most exciting to me immediately was, wow, I can take this little screen, I can expand it and see and watch TV on 90 inches. Now, my kids are going to be doing that walking, and they're not that coordinated, so that's going to be kind of frightening. So, so I thought the Build, a lot of the announcements that they made at Build, the unified API that we talked about for graph.microsoft.com that they did announce at Build was really exciting. The HoloLens stuff, all of those things that came out of Build were really neat. The Windows 10 stuff that they're doing is just phenomenal. The fact that they announced that there will not be a Windows 11. The fact that they have made that statement, that was out there yesterday in the world.
I'm not sure that statement came credible enough to say.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much I buy it.
Yeah, the reality is whatever they say, it's going to change. But what they have said very clearly is that Windows is going to be a rolling service. So, it's going to be something where updates come, functionality gets added, and it's just going to keep rolling with innovation. So whether it's called Windows 365, Windows 10, Windows 11 is completely irrelevant. We know it's going to be Windows, and it's just going to be marketing from here on out that decides if and when they draw a line between versions. But and in my opinion, versions are so 2005. There aren't versions of anything anymore.
Yeah, I think that it can be real that there will not be a Windows 11. Whether or not there will be another kernel, Rev, is a completely different story. So for those of you who didn't get to attend, didn't get to see the keynote, are interested in any of the developer sessions that happened at Build, in our links here, there's also Build session videos on Channel 9 as well. So if you go to channel9.mscn.com, you will find them under the event section. Also, all of them are out there at this point, and all are posted. So that's how you can catch up. So a couple of other links that are here. We've talked through some of these. Actually didn't mention this one that I put in the links. David Mann posted up on IT Unity, I believe it was yesterday, Keynote Indexed. So if you're watching the keynote from Ignite and you want to get to the good stuff, not that it's not all good stuff, but it's not all good stuff all the time. There's a nice indexed set of links of where to jump to for the things that we probably really care about in the Office 365 and SharePoint world. So check that out. David Mann does a really great job. The experts' guides to the Ignite sessions are all out there. And something that I found, thanks to Richard Harbridge, not Spencer Harbridge, Richard Harbridge posted something today talking about PowerShell for Office 365. So I think that's really interesting. So if you take a look at PowerShell, the link that I posted there, it's a coming soon, but it's a tutorial. It's going to be helpful links in PowerShell code for IT pros trying to get their foot in the door and ramped up for Office 365. And we have a PowerShell channel that we're getting spun up here for IT Unity as well. So lots of great content out there for your IT pros also. Couple of plugs for some sessions. Link to Jen's session on proven ways to build no-code solutions. So take a look at that. And then Dan did a session, I believe you did that with Agnes, correct?
That's right.
So, and Jen did hers with Asif. So Dan did Big Bang, the new universe of findability and discoverability. Talking about the Office Graph and Delve and all that really neat stuff that's out there, so you can take a look at that. And then we mentioned the really exciting MVP panel that both Dan and Jen were on. SharePoint on-prem, online, and everything in between. You'll hear all about really cool stuff through that session. Lastly, make sure you join the conversation on the now Office 365 network. Get out there. There was a Yam Jam out there today on SharePoint 2016. There were a couple of things that I thought were notable announcements that came out of that I'll mention. For the business user community, there's not going to be, at the launch of SharePoint 2016 on-prem, there will not be a SharePoint Designer 2016. What they've stated is that SharePoint Designer 2013 will work for SharePoint 2016. So that was something that Bill Baer, actually said today, put in writing and out there on the Yammers. And the other one that I thought was really interesting, that I heard no less than a dozen times at Ignite, was, will there be a SharePoint Foundation for 2016? At this point, they have stated authoritatively that at the launch of SharePoint 2016, there will be no separate foundation product. So I think that's interesting. I know a lot of businesses out there try to stay on the free version of SharePoint, but at this point it won't be there for 2016. So I think that'll be very interesting. The other big announcements that I saw that were neat that they were talking about there, Office Graph Access from on-prem, the hybrid scenario that Dan had mentioned earlier, really exciting stuff that they're giving us an on-ramp. And very specifically, that we haven't mentioned this at all during this conversation, I think is really relevant for the business user, a unified search experience between on-prem and Office 365. Not just through Delve, although you're getting it through Delve as well, but leveraging a new cloud search service that will be available for both on-prem SharePoint 2016 and SharePoint 2013 later this year. There's going to be a cloud search service application that you'll be able to plug in and hook up to Office 365. It will provide a unified search service and give you one set of results.
Yep. And that
for me is huge. That's the one that my business users ask for every time, and now we're going to be able to give it to them, both for 2013 and 2016. And oh, by the way, if you're leveraging a search in 2013 in your 2010 farm, you'll get it there also.
Yeah, and one other really interesting scenario about that cloud SSA, as it's called, is it's going to help businesses that have multiple on-prem farms. So again, if an organization has a farm in North America in their data center, a farm in, let's say, Sydney in their data center, they're going to be able to use the cloud SSA to feed those multiple on-prem tenancies into the cloud, and through that, create a unified search experience across all of their on-prem environments as well, which has been very difficult for customers in the past. So I think the hybrid search is going to be a big driver for people to actually finish putting their toes in the water of Office 365. Even if all they use is Search and Office Graph and Delve, those are going to create enormous value for their on-prem efforts.
I didn't have anything else. That was the end of our sway for the day. Not trying to rhyme, but does anybody have any questions out there in the chat? Feel free to post them now. Dan, it's been awesome getting to spend some time with you. We try and do this, not in an online format as often as we can. Sometimes we go months without being able to do it, but it's always fun getting to geek out with you. And thank you for stepping in to be Jen's understudy for the day. Again, Jen, feel better fast. We want you back. The next show is scheduled for May 20th. Jen is going to be back hosting, and I will be her guest for that show. And they did announce the next Ignite. That is correct. I believe it's May 9th of next year. It will be back at the McCormick Center in Chicago. For those who didn't get to attend, there were some logistical issues that they are definitely working to work out. Some lines that we all kind of expected when you put 23,000 attendees into one space, cab lines and bus lines and food lines, they're going to be a little bit long. That's just part of the reality of 23,000 humans in one place. But hearing from the Microsoft folks that they're taking lessons and trying to learn the lessons from this time. I look forward to seeing it again next year. Would have loved for it to be in Vegas or something fun like that, but Chicago was a really nice host city. Some really great restaurants, some really great things. I got to get out for a nice run while I was there. It was awesome. Got to go take some bean selfies. That was fun.
Yeah, and to answer Eric's question, I do not believe there's a user voice for Ignite. I'll have to actually ping Olaf and see if they want to set that up. I got a little bit of cold shivers when they announced that it was going to be another Ignite next year in Chicago, because this event was huge. I think I averaged 7 miles of walking a day just inside the convention center, and that's not an exaggeration. That's a Microsoft Band report. We all walked a lot. The lines were crazy, but it was an amazing experience. And I think, honestly, if I were to talk to someone who was thinking about going next year, I would say absolutely positively register the minute registration becomes available, because it will sell out again. And also, I personally, if I were attending it next year, Michael says bring your own lunch. That's a very good suggestion. But also, I would actually attend with an expectation of not going to any sessions. I would actually go and focus on the expo hall, which was enormously valuable, more valuable than typically I find it to be. Spend time at the Microsoft booth in the expo hall, spend time talking to people, spend time networking. It was an amazing experience for that. And then the sessions are there. You can watch the sessions in your hotel room. You can watch the sessions on the plane home. You can watch the sessions the week after. But the experience of having that many people with that many levels of expertise in one place, I thought was enormously valuable and makes Ignite a very compelling story for 2016.
The networking opportunities that happened were phenomenal. Just getting to learn from others, getting to do some of I got to speak at one of the theater sessions on user groups and things of that nature with Caruana and a couple of others. Those were really, a lot of people attended some of those sessions. It was really valuable. But beyond that, getting there, and I think not doing any sessions is a hard thing to sell for a lot of corporate customers. But the reality is that if you can pick, instead of saying I'm going to go to 5 sessions a day, pick 2, and make sure you're there 25 minutes early so you get a seat in that theater. That's, for me, if I'm trying to sell Ignite, that's the way I'm selling it. There are 5 topics I really want to go, be in the room, be able to ask questions for, and then make sure that I'm there and get there nice and early for them, be the first person online, waiting while in the middle of the session before, and spend that time answering email, doing whatever. It's not wasted time being able to do something like that. There are so many great things about coming to an event of this nature. The trade show floor alone, getting to see all of the different vendors. Honestly, I knew, I consider myself in the know, especially around the vendor space. I didn't know a tenth of the vendors that I saw with booths. It was phenomenal. I got to spend a lot of time talking to new vendors I'd never met before, hearing about some really great products that solve great problems out there that I didn't, I didn't think there were solutions for. And getting to see what is being done by some of the vendors that you do know and love, and getting to see them announce some of their bigger stuff, some of the things that came out with the announcements that happened with some of the APIs and being opened up from a migration perspective. Huge announcements that happened, getting to see those demos and get signed up for that early. So Thought it was really great to be able to do. I will be back for Ignite next year. I know you will as well, Dan. I definitely recommend it to people to go out and check out with the right expectations. If you're going thinking it's tech ed, it's not tech ed. It's not like that anymore. So it's definitely a different experience, and being able to download sessions the same night that they were actually put on was a really cool thing. So with that, I think, Dan, you might be muted, and I lost Dan. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap our time together. There we go, Dan. I think it's time for us to wrap. I know it's time for people to get back to the real worlds. And thank you very much for coming and joining me today and letting me join you. And we'll look forward to talking to everybody next week. Take care.
Thanks so much, Jason. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Know what happiness is.